the newly elected scholar, in his desperation, jumped into my carriage. On that day, news of the relationship between the Song family's daughter and the newly elected scholar spread quickly. The Empress had always loved me, and couldn't bear to see my reputation ruined. So she issued an edict granting me marriage to him as a princess. After we got married, his career progressed smoothly, and I took care of him and raised our children. We weren't particularly loving, but we treated each other with respect. Until the emperor was assassinated, and he stepped forward to block the blade. As his life hung in the balance, he pleaded with the emperor to allow him to divorce me and return home to be buried with his childhood sweetheart. If I had known that I couldn't even decide my own marriage, I would have never taken the imperial examination. Because of those words, I and my 2 children became a laughingstock. When I opened my eyes again, everything had returned to the beginning. In this life, I will not give him the chance to humiliate me again. When Suzian frantically fled to my carriage, I stared wide-eyed, the events of my previous life replaying in my mind like a slideshow. I looked down at my slender hands, with skin as smooth as cream, the way they were before I was married, and my heart beat wildly. In my previous life, I died of old age, but my life was truly torturous. Suzian's words turned me into a bad person who used her power to force me to marry the top scholar. Because of this, my son and daughter became the subject of gossip and couldn't hold their heads up high. They were already past marriageable age, but everyone kept their distance from them. Miss? Seeing that I didn't respond, Suzian waved his hand in front of my face. His voice snapped me out of my memories, and my gaze cleared. Looking at the man who had ruined my life, I couldn't help but shrink back. Suzian furrowed his brows, a hint of displeasure flashing in his eyes before quickly disappearing. I am Suzian, this year's newly elected scholar. I had no choice but to offend you, as I was being chased by those who were looking for a husband from the list. Would you be so kind as to let me hide here for a moment? You can rest assured that I will not harm your reputation in any way. I remained expressionless, secretly mocking him in my heart. Suzian, still as smooth-talking and charming as he was in my previous life. In fact, my reputation was never within his consideration. On the day the results were announced, more and more people gathered at the gate of the government office, and the voices outside the carriage were boisterous. I spoke slowly. Oh, how many couples have been brought together by catching a husband on the list? Why do you look so reluctant, young master? Miss, you may not know, but I have always believed that marriage is a serious matter that cannot be taken lightly. One must get to know each other and develop mutual affection before marrying. How can one be so hasty and let oneself be chosen by others? Suzian looked at me intently. The carriage was cramped, but he still opened his folding fan with grace. In my previous life, it was Suzian's firm words that moved me to decide to marry him after the rumors spread. But now, it just sounded vague and harsh to my ears. He didn't want to be chosen from the list of eligible bachelors because he already had someone he wanted to marry. His childhood sweetheart in the countryside. The two had agreed long ago that when he achieved success, he would return to his hometown to marry her. His childhood sweetheart even contributed to Suzian's travel expenses for the imperial examination. I didn't know why he didn't refuse the arranged marriage. Maybe he didn't want to or didn't dare. But he never told me about any of this, and their grudge should not involve me. Thinking of the humiliation Suzian had inflicted on me before he died in my previous life, I gritted my teeth and felt the fire of anger burning in my heart. Hatred made my body tremble slightly, and I couldn't hold back any longer. With all my strength, I kicked Suzian out of the carriage. Who are you? Get out of here! Suzian rolled several times before managing to stand up. His robe was covered in dust, and he looked utterly disheveled. How dare you? You! Suzian furrowed his brows. his eyes turning cold. He looked at me and scolded me with contempt. I was terrified. Such an imposing and intimidating aura could only come from decades of high office and wealth. Just one word was enough to make me turn around. Suzian had also been reborn. How could the newly elected scholar be so rude? Our young lady is the adopted daughter of the Empress. Princess Xiao. How dare you break into the princess's carriage? Are you tired of living? My maid Bao Lian put her hands on her hips and pointed at Suzian, scolding him harshly. I sneered in my heart. Of course he didn't care about my reputation. He would love to see me ashamed and beg him to marry me in the middle of the street. Suzian's expression changed, and he was about to step forward to defend himself. But I raised my arm slightly and said indifferently, "Someone beat him up. Let the newly elected top scholar learn the rules of the palace. Otherwise, he'll make a fool of himself when he enters the palace. When that happens, he'll probably lose his life." The two servants received my order and rushed over without a word. They kicked and punched Suzian. The crowd pointed and gawked. The newly elected scholar being beaten in the street was enough to keep everyone talking for days. Ever since I discovered I had been reborn, my anxious heart had finally calmed down a little. Beating up Suzian was partly to vent the anger from being deceived and humiliated by him in my previous life. But more importantly, I wanted everyone present to know that it was Suzian who had dared to enter my carriage. My reputation must not be ruined by him again. Stop! Stop! I am the newly elected scholar appointed by His Majesty himself. How dare you dogs dare to lay a hand on me? Suzian does have some talent, but his fighting skills are nothing to write home about. He is no match for the two servants in my mansion. I stood with my hands behind my back in front of the carriage, listening to Suzian's cries. My face as calm as water, without a ripple. Only when Suzian was beaten black and blue did I yawn and say, "Enough. Don't hurt the scholar." As I spoke, I walked over to him, smoothed the hair on his temple, and adjusted the hairpin on his head. The top scholar has probably only read the books of the sages and doesn't understand the law. You broke into the princess's carriage, and according to the law, you should have your hands chopped off and your eyes gouged out. We're just teaching you a lesson, which is already showing you a lot of mercy. Scholar, aren't you going to thank us? Suzian pushed away the people who wanted to help him up and stood up with difficulty. He slowly turned his head to look at me, his eyes cold, his hoarse voice suppressing the anger that was about to explode. It was rude of me. Thank you for your generosity, princess. I shot a cold glance at Suzian, whose expression was gloomy and his teeth clenched. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Suzian, in your previous life, you rose to prominence relying on my status and position, yet you never showed the slightest gratitude. This time, I will grant your wish and let you go find your little green plum. I just don't know if you, who have enjoyed wealth, honor, and a high-ranking official position, can bear the humiliation of being trampled underfoot. However, my joy at my new life did not last long. Rumors about Suzian and me began to spread again. You know, the biggest imperial merchant in the capital, right? I heard that his second daughter and the newly elected scholar are in love. I heard. Countless high-ranking officials waited early at the county office just to get the scholar to marry into their family. But Suzian didn't even glance at any of them. He jumped straight into the second daughter of the Jiang family's carriage and stayed there for a long time before coming out. When I heard these rumors, I was at the tailor's shop picking out new clothes. I lost all interest and headed home. On the way, I couldn't help but hit my forehead twice. If our meeting in the previous life was a coincidence, then in this life, he was malicious. I didn't hit him hard enough. If I had known, I would have cut off one of Suzian's hands to make him suffer. I really regret it. But logically speaking, I beat Suzian so badly that it was painful to look at. It would be good enough if he didn't spread rumors about us, let alone say that we were secretly involved with each other. No. There must be something fishy going on. I ordered my servants to find a few gossip mongers. But I gave them a little silver. And they told them everything they knew. They gave up the messenger. Your Highness. The investigation is complete. Those who spread the rumors are all from the same place. What was it called again? Wangbei Village? A name popped into my head. And to my surprise, the servant nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes. That's the village. My heart sank. Wangbei Village was the hometown of Su Zian and his childhood sweetheart, Xin Yan. A cold light flashed in my eyes. And I laughed coldly. This Xin Yan, although just a country girl, was really clever. In my previous life, I was ruined by her and had no choice but to marry Su Zian. It turns out that everything was Xin Yan's scheme. Having lived 2 lives, I can guess what she's after. She's just thinking that Su Zian is a poor nobleman, and without a powerful patron by his side, even if he enters the imperial court, he won't go far. And I, in her eyes, am the most suitable patron. As for her, she only needs to hide in the shadows, relying on Su Zian's endless guilt toward her, to enjoy a life of wealth and luxury, living the life of a concubine. Neither she nor Su Zian realize that if I refuse, there are few in the entire imperial city who can control me. Jiang Xiao. Those who harbor such petty thoughts toward me will never end well. Bao Lian. Go to the city and find a doctor. Then go to Wangbei Village under the pretext of seeking medical treatment. Find someone named Xin Yan and have the doctor take her pulse. If you discover any issues, spread the news far and wide. A smile curved my lips, and my brows arched lightly. If I recall correctly, there's another reason why Xin Yan was willing to push her childhood sweetheart into another's arms. She's infertile. As I was instructing Bao Lian on what to do, a voice as cold as jade rang out. It made me shiver and my nose sting. Useless. You couldn't even go out without getting hit by a phoenix man. You're too kind-hearted. What? Are you not going to fight back and just wait until your reputation is ruined and you have to marry him? Only to be eaten alive? Although I didn't quite understand what the woman was saying, and although she looked as cold as ice, scolding me like a puppy, I couldn't control my emotions and rushed forward to hug the woman. My lips trembled, and my eyes welled up with tears, as if I could burst into tears at any moment. Sister! I miss you so much. Jiang Yunxi was startled by my sudden confession and froze in place. It took her a long time to recover, and she pushed me away frantically. Her originally cold expression briefly showed a hint of panic. What are you doing, you little brat? We just had breakfast together this morning. I stared at Jiang Yunxi, not responding, just giggling foolishly. Jiang Yunxi is not my real sister. She is an orphan that my parents took in. She is aloof but kind and brave, and exceptionally intelligent. She manages the family business with great efficiency. It can be said that the Jiang family's rise to become imperial merchants would not have been possible without her contributions. I have always looked up to her as a role model, until Su Zian appeared. Ever since she heard about this, my older sister has been firmly opposed to our marriage. But I feel like I've fallen into a trap. Determined to marry Su Zian, my elder sister. Zian said he would treat me well. He is, after all, the top scholar of the imperial examination. It would be too much of a sacrifice for him to marry me. Otherwise, who would want to marry me now with my current reputation? My elder sister was so angry that her eyebrows furrowed, and she pointed at me with a look of disappointment. I still remember it clearly. Jiang Xiao, you are the Empress's adopted daughter. A princess. He's just a poor scholar who passed the imperial examination. He shouldn't even dare to look at you, let alone marry you. Look at him with those shifty eyes. He doesn't look like a good person. Besides, reputation is nothing. As long as you say you won't marry him, I don't think anyone will dare to say anything against you. Jiang Yushi, will tear their mouths apart. But even so, she couldn't pull me back from the brink of disaster. My sister felt uncomfortable with me staring at her, so she coughed lightly to ease the awkwardness. Softy. Our Jiang family has plenty of money. So if we're going to do it, let's do it big. We should also spread the news about how the newly elected top scholar, in order to curry favor, disregarded etiquette and climbed into the princess's carriage in public, only to be kicked to the ground. In my previous life, my sister said the same thing to me, but I didn't want to ruin Su Xian's future. So not only did I refuse, I also said that my sister was a cruel and extreme person. Since then, my sister has ignored me, until I passed away. She never came to see me once. I truly broke her heart. And now, I'm playfully wrapping my arms around my older sister's waist, lifting my head to look up at her, my eyes curved into little crescents. Good. Older sister. You're so clever and quick-witted, making your younger sister so admiring of you. My older sister was startled by my actions, her face flushing red in an instant. I couldn't help but laugh softly. My older sister, who always seemed so cold and impartial, was actually so adorable. Thinking back to the previous life when Su Xian and my older sister had no contact with each other until death, the resentment in my heart grew even stronger. My older sister said she would arrange for someone to handle these matters for me, and told me to enter the palace as soon as possible to visit the Empress. Now that the rumors about me and Su Xian are spreading like wildfire, the Empress must be worried about the injustice I have suffered. If someone with ulterior motives were to manipulate her, and she were to arrange a marriage between me and Su Xian, I would regret it too late. I was so scared that I couldn't swallow the tea in my mouth, and it all sprayed out. Balian, hurry and prepare the carriage. I rushed out the door. My elder sister shook her head helplessly and gave me a loving reminder. Slow down, you clumsy girl. My head buzzed, and I felt dazed for a moment. My heart couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. That's right. How long had it been since I'd been so reckless? So carefree? Since marrying Su Xian, I no longer had my parents or older sister to protect me from the storms of life. Every big and small matter in the household fell on my shoulders. I became the woman behind him, using the power and wealth of the Jiang family to help him rise to prominence. But he went behind my back and secretly met with Shen Yan, acting as if they were lovers. In the end, he risked his life to save the emperor. Such a great favor. He could have used it to secure a reward that would have allowed me and the children to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. But not only did he not do that, he also placed us, a mother and daughter, in a place where we were despised by everyone, subjected to verbal abuse and criticism. Su Xian, you truly deserve to die 1,000 deaths. As I was thinking about him, I had already reached the palace gates, hurrying toward the Empress's chambers when I unexpectedly encountered Su Xian on the way. Truly, enemies meet in narrow places. I wanted to go around him and ignore him, but Su Xian seemed determined to block my path, constantly moving back and forth in front of me. Get out of my way! Are you annoying or what? My eyes flashed with coldness as I scolded him harshly. Su Xian's pupils contracted sharply as he stared at me in shock. After all, we had lived together for over a decade. Even if Su Xian no longer cared about me, he should at least know my temperament. Seeing his expression, he must have noticed something off about me. Si Yao, you've been reborn too, right? My heart tightened, and I remained silent. Su Xian thought I had admitted it, his eyes flashing with excitement as he rushed forward and grabbed my hands tightly. His voice tinged with anger. Si Yao, I just won the top spot in the high school entrance exam. Why did you humiliate me in front of everyone? In my previous life, I reached the rank of first-class official. Yet I never even took a concubine. From beginning to end, you were the only wife I ever had. What else are you dissatisfied with? Why are you humiliating me like this? Suzian's words almost made me laugh out loud. If I didn't want to reveal that I had been reborn, I would have tied Xinyan to him and confronted him properly. I took a deep breath and raised my hand, slapping Suzian hard across the face. You lecherous scoundrel. What nonsense are you spouting? Not only did you barge into my carriage without permission a few days ago, but now you dare to speak so boldly here. You are truly stubborn and unrepentant. Guards, escort him out of the palace. Suzian watched as the guards in the distance heard my order and began to rush over. He looked somewhat anxious, and despite his reddened cheek from my slap, he muttered to himself. What's going on? Why isn't this right? Jiang Xiao should be in love with me by now. At this point, the Empress should have already arranged our marriage. No. Why isn't this right? I know. Suzian suddenly seemed to have figured something out, and the furrowed brows between his eyebrows relaxed. He raised his chin high, adopting an arrogant posture. He probably still thinks he's the powerful official from his previous life who could command the winds and rains. Xiao, you're just shy, aren't you? That makes sense, a girl wouldn't dare to say such things. It was a mistake in my previous life. This time, as long as I bring her home early and ask you to marry her, wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? I know you've been infatuated with me for a long time. Rest assured, as long as you can tolerate her, I'll even give you the position of primary wife, so you can still live in glory outside the home. I crossed my arms across my chest and coldly glanced at Suzian, who was lost in his own fantasies. Just one glance was enough to make me despise him, and I quickly looked away. He wasn't worth another glance. In this new life, Suzian is actually going to such lengths to make me share a husband with Xinyan. Even the position of legitimate wife has to be granted by him. It seems that in my previous life, I truly lived too comfortably, which made Suzian think I was an easy target he could manipulate at will. As Suzian was being escorted away by the guards, he still said to me, Xiao, you wait. I'll go find the Empress in 2 days to ask her to arrange our marriage. My expression darkened instantly, and my eyes flashed with anger. Suzian, have you been struck by lightning and burned your brain in the past 2 days? Stop fantasizing. I won't marry you. Suzian paused, then sneered disdainfully. You're already famous. If you don't marry me, who else would marry you? Who else would dare to marry you? In my previous life, I ruined my entire life because of this. And now Suzian is using it to blackmail me. I clenched my fists tightly, my nails digging into my palms. I felt a surge of anger rushing to my head, and just as I was about to lose my mind, a lazy, clear voice drifted into my ears. If Princess Xiao is willing to marry me, I would be honored. Turning to look at the person who spoke, my gaze froze, and a flash of surprise crossed my eyes. 2. Before I could finish speaking, Xia Han reached out a hand to stop me. He didn't let me call out the crown prince's name. I nodded to the guards and released Suzian. He walked up to Xia Han, sizing him up from head to toe. And after a moment, he sneered dismissively. Looking at you, you must be a merchant, right? Xia Han smiled faintly and rolled his eyes. If you say so, you're not wrong. I deal in official salt. As if satisfied with his own answer, Suzian snorted coldly, looking down on everyone else. A mere merchant dares to speak so boldly in front of this top scholar? There are 4 classes in this world: scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants. You're not even worthy of tying my shoes. Yet you dare to say you want to marry the princess? I glanced sideways at Xiahan. Not bad. It seems he hasn't decided to drag Suzian out of the noon gate and execute him yet. However, Xiahan was also skilled in killing with words. He quickly grabbed my hand, and just as Suzian was about to charge over in anger, he swiftly pulled out the golden token bestowed by the emperor from his robe. Suzian was startled and fell to his knees with a thud. This subject pays homage to the emperor. Seeing the golden token was like seeing the emperor himself. Suzian prostrated himself on the ground in reverence. But Xiahan held the token aloft for a long time without lowering it. Instead, he leaned close to my ear. From what I heard, you're determined not to marry him, right? I furrowed my brows and shook my head vigorously. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Xiahan's eyes light up, and he gripped my hand even tighter. Let me tell you, I just persuaded the Empress Dowager on your behalf. Otherwise, the imperial decree would have already been delivered to the Jiang family by now. Tell me, how do you plan to thank me? Xiahan turned his head to look at me, a lazy smile in his eyes. I tapped my fingers lightly on my lips, as if thinking seriously. How about this? Will you marry me? As soon as I said that, Xiahan froze, his tall figure trembling for a moment. Si Yao, are you serious? I didn't say anything, just held Xiahan's hand back. I knew that Xiahan had feelings for me. At that time, I accompanied my father to the palace to pay his respects, and the empress said that I was pretty and lovely, and she liked me very much. She insisted on giving me the title of princess. It was Xiahan who refused with a cold face. Everyone thought he was just a jealous child and called him petty. But he blushed and said angrily, No, she can't be a princess. If she is, I won't be able to marry Jiang Xiao. That young man with bright eyes full of sincerity and stubbornness was already engraved in my mind. When Suzian died and pushed us, my mother and daughters, into the limelight, Xiahan always stood up for me. But Xiahan was the crown prince, the heir to the throne. He was a man who cared so much for his country and his people, and I didn't want him to lose the people's trust because of me. Life is so short. It's better not to meet. Later, I left with my 2 daughters without saying goodbye. And we had no further contact. What are you 2 talking about? Suzian's teeth-gritting voice snapped both Xiahan and me back to reality. Oh, we almost forgot the top scholar is still kneeling. Someone, come here. Keep an eye on the top scholar. He's not allowed to stand up until he's been kneeling for an hour. Xiahan's feigned surprise made me giggle. Then, ignoring Suzian, who was furious, I said, Come, I'll take you to see my mother. My sister always got things done quickly. In just a few days, the news of Suzian and Shenyan spread like wildfire. I had no time to care, as I was busy persuading my sister not to prepare so much dowry for me. Yao, if you keep this up, my sister will get angry. Even if he is the crown prince, our Jiang family's daughters are not inferior to him in any way. This is your confidence. Once you enter the palace, he will not dare to treat you badly. My sister did not object to my marriage to Xiahan this time. But when it came to the preparations, she was meticulous, as if she wanted to put the entire Jiang family's fortune into my dowry. All right. I'll listen to you. I no longer insisted and clung to my older sister. Acting spoiled. My older sister blushed again. I'll go check on the shop. You're tired, go rest for a while. But as soon as my older sister left, the servants rushed in. Miss, the top scholar is at the door, demanding to see you. I furrowed my brows and waved my hand impatiently. I won't see him. Send him away. The servant hesitated, looking left and right with a troubled expression. The top scholar said. He said. What did he say? He said he obtained the imperial decree granting the marriage and came to bring the good news to the young miss. It was like a thunderbolt struck my brain, and my eyes widened in fear. That day, Xia Han took me to see the Empress. After hearing about us, the Empress was so happy that she wanted to grant us an imperial marriage right away. I stopped her and said, I wanted to wait until the storm passed. How could she grant Su Zian an imperial marriage? Let him in. As soon as Su Zian entered, he saw the room filled with gold and jewels, and he raised his eyebrows slightly, a look of disdain on his lips. I heard that the Jiang family is preparing your dowry for you. It's true, isn't it? Si Yao. You've even prepared your dowry in advance. Yet you say you don't want to marry me? Don't worry. Your older sister doesn't know about your feelings for me. I won't hold her accountable for slandering me in her anger. I was about to protest, but Su Zian scolded me sternly. But you shouldn't have made it known to everyone that Xin Yan is unable to have children. A woman's reputation is more important than anything else. How will she live in the city from now on? However, I have already spoken to her. After you marry into the family, offer her a cup of tea and apologize. If you bear me a son or daughter, I will give her one as her share. Su Zian's insensitive words made my gaze grow colder and colder. How dare he say that a woman's reputation is more important than heaven? It's utterly ridiculous. I could no longer contain the frustration in my heart, and glared at him with hatred and contempt in my eyes. Su Zian, why do you think I would ever look at you? A disgraced former top scholar? You've already brought Xin Yan to your side, haven't you? You're selfish and self-serving, and she has a heart as venomous as a snake. There's probably no one in this world more suited for each other than the two of you. Hearing my firm refusal and harsh curses, Su Zian, whose face had been slapped, suddenly turned gloomy. Si Yao, Xin Yan has sacrificed a lot for me. I won't allow anyone to slander her. Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're a princess. Wait until I rise to power, and you'll be begging me. Besides, the imperial decree is here. You have no say in the matter. I stared at the imperial decree that Su Zian held above his head, my heart racing. Could something have gone wrong? By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, Su Zian is both talented and handsome, a pillar of the state. Therefore, I hereby bestow upon him. And Su Zian dramatically unfolded the imperial edict and read it aloud with pride. But halfway through, his expression suddenly changed, and he spat lightly, closed the edict, and turned to leave. Before I could reach out to stop him, he was already rushing toward the door. The imperial edict wasn't even finished yet. Where was the top scholar in the imperial examination in such a hurry? Xia Han walked toward him with his hands behind his back. Su Zian didn't even glance at Xia Han and reached out to push him aside. But Xia Han didn't move an inch. Su Zian was seething with anger and was about to lash out when Xia Han smiled and kicked Su Zian, sending him flying toward me. Startled, I instinctively jumped backward. Xia Han, next time use some restraint. Don't let that disgusting thing get so close to me. Su Zian slammed his fist on the ground, his eyes darting from me to Xia Han, flashing with a cold glare of rage. You, a lowly salt merchant, dare to lay a hand on the top scholar 3 times. I see you don't want to live. Watch out. Xia Han was never one to hold a grudge. But just because he hadn't confronted Su Zian before didn't mean he could keep pushing his limits. The imperial authority was not something he could afford to offend. Xia Han's expression grew icy as he grabbed Su Zian by the throat. Then he turned to look at me. Xiao Yao, why don't I handle him for you? He's just a top scholar. We can just choose another one. Looking at Xia Han's expression, it seemed like he was seriously considering it. After all, being constantly reminded of his unmarried wife was indeed very infuriating. However, I didn't stop him. Instead, I thought about it seriously for a while. If we could do it without anyone knowing, then it was worth considering. I'll kill him, and you bury the body. It'll be fine. Seeing that I was indeed unwavering, Xiahan smirked and deliberately dragged out his words. This truly scared Su Zian half to death. He struggled desperately to escape from Xiahan's grasp. His face flushed red, and his clothes were in disarray, looking utterly disheveled. Xiahan was disgusted and loosened his grip. I stood behind them, wishing I could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Fortunately, no one else remembered what had happened in the previous life. Otherwise I would have had no face to show them. Such a cowardly, selfish, and cowardly person. What on earth did I see in him? After breaking free, Su Zian glared at me and Xiahan, clenching his teeth in anger. Fine. You just wait. I'll report you to the Emperor. Report him? Just thinking about that scene made me unable to hold back my laughter. I burst out laughing. Xiahan was attracted by my laughter and turned to look at me. Su Zian tried to sneak away. But Xiahan was no fool. He quickly drew the sword at his side and held it to Su Zian's neck. Did I let you go? I haven't finished reading the Imperial Edict yet. Su Zian's face was filled with anger. But he didn't dare to resist. He could only clench and unclench his fists repeatedly, hesitating to read the Imperial Edict. Hurry up and read it. Xiahan's sword trembled violently, causing Su Zian's body to shudder. Today, it is specially decreed that he shall marry Xin Yan. By imperial decree. I blinked my eyes, finally realizing what had happened. The story of Xin Yan seeking renowned doctors to treat her infertility, with the help of her older sister, had spread throughout the city. However, Xin Yan was an unknown name, but the imperial edict would soon be announced to the world. Now, bestowing an infertile woman upon the newly elected top scholar as his wife was undoubtedly saying that Su Zian's career was over. Xiahan looked at Su Zian, who was still standing there in a daze, and raised his voice in feigned confusion. Yao Yao, you say it has to be Xin Yan? That's really generous of her. Although she and the top scholar were deeply in love and had grown up together, she had hired people to specifically invite high-ranking officials to select a husband from the list of examinees for the top scholar's sake. Such a love was truly enviable. I couldn't help but giggle. I never realized before how skilled Xiahan was at mocking people. Su Zian's face turned pale in an instant. At this point, with his memories from 2 lifetimes, he had already figured everything out. No, it can't be. Xin Yan isn't that kind of person. Xiahan snorted coldly. Is that so? She hasn't paid the money she owes to the people she hired, and they're all blocking the gate of the scholar's mansion. Why don't you go back and take a look? Su Zian's face was extremely ugly. He looked at me, then lowered his eyes, his expression gloomy. After struggling in his heart for a long time, he finally cursed and left. I thought that my connection with Su Zian would end here. But 3 months later, the emperor held a hunting party, and Su Zian was among the invited guests. Xiahan said he would report to the emperor to have him removed from the list. But I shook my head and stopped him. Because in my previous life, Su Zian had taken a sword blow for the emperor on the hunting grounds. What was meant to happen would happen. Su Zian came alone, without bringing Xin Yan. I heard that the 2 of them had gotten married over 2 months ago, and less than a month after their marriage, Su Zian had taken a concubine. When I heard this, I merely smiled faintly. It seems that even childhood sweethearts are no exception. Si Yao. I arrived a bit early, intending to wait quietly for Xiahan to find me, until Su Zian's voice echoed behind me. I couldn't help but shiver. nearly holding my breath. He's truly relentless. I hurried my steps, unwilling to acknowledge him. Su Zian, however, seemed determined, bellowing, "Jiang Xiao," as everyone's eyes turned to us. I wanted to tear him to pieces. Su Zian looked around me and, seeing no sign of Xia Han, let out a long breath and glanced away. "That salt merchant abandoned you, didn't he? I told you, no one but me would ever marry you. I know my current status. But don't worry. After today, I, Su Zian, will surely be granted a title and become a general. Don't even mention the emperor giving you to me. Even if he were to make me your prince consort, the emperor would agree. Perhaps in this life, you truly have no interest in me. But I won't let you off the hook. Jiang Xiao, you can't escape my grasp." My eyes darted around, but seeing that Xia Han hadn't arrived yet, I could only keep licking my lips, trying to ease the anxiety and unease in my heart. Just as I reached out to stop Su Zian, the emperor and empress arrived. I had to watch Su Zian walk step by step toward the emperor, but I couldn't do anything. More and more moments overlapped with my previous life, and my heart pounded wildly. "Come on, my ministers. Let me see your agile skills. Now is the time." At this moment in my previous life, an assassin disguised as a eunuch had sneaked in, pulled out a dagger, and rushed straight towards the emperor. In the same place, a eunuch moved. Su Zian rushed over without hesitation and pulled out the dagger he had prepared in his bosom, intending to kill the eunuch. "Your Majesty, be careful. Father, be careful. Let me go. Let me go. There's an assassin. I'm here to save the emperor." Su Zian's plan had failed. At that moment, he was being held down on the ground by Xia Han, who had rushed over. In his panic and anger, he even bit into the dirt. He shouted loudly, struggling, but it was all in vain. "You bold assassin! You dare to slander me! This place is surrounded by the emperor's personal servants. Which one of them doesn't know you?" Su Zian struggled to lift his eyelids and looked at the eunuch who was supposed to be the assassin. It was clearly him. No. That's not right. Why is this not him? It's you. It must be you. You and that lowly salt merchant. You must have been afraid that I would steal your thunder. So you bribed an assassin to frame me. Your Majesty. It's him. He's the assassin's accomplice. Arrest him and torture him, and he'll confess." Su Zian pointed at Xia Han, his face contorted. Everyone present heard his words and froze in place. No one dared to speak for a long time. Pfft! I couldn't hold back any longer and burst out laughing. The emperor was furious. "Nonsense! You've read too many books and gone mad." The empress was supporting the emperor, who had been slightly startled, and said to Xia Han, "Prince, quickly take this madman away." Su Zian's expression froze on his face. "Crown Prince? Who is the Crown Prince?" Xia Han snorted coldly and kicked him toward the guards. He bowed and said, "Yes. Your servant obeys." Su Zian suddenly raised his head, his face pale and his lips trembling, clearly unable to accept the reality before him. "Crown Prince? You're the Crown Prince." The onlookers watched the scene unfold and couldn't help but whisper among themselves. "Is this assassin crazy? He doesn't even recognize the Crown Prince." "You're not the only one. I just saw him pestering the Crown Princess. He even said he wanted to take her as his concubine." It's laughable. Even Su Zian, as dim-witted as he was, finally understood why he had ended up in such a predicament. "Jiang Xiao, you tricked me. You remember everything." I raised the corners of my mouth slightly and glanced indifferently at the finger Su Zian was pointing at me. In just a moment, Xia Han understood what I meant and broke Su Xian's finger. I walked over to Su Xian, who was screaming in pain, frowned, and rubbed my ear. Xia Han grabbed Su Xian's collar and stuffed his mouth shut tightly. Su Xian, you think you can use this opportunity to rise to power. But do you know? I've been waiting for this day for a long time. The assassin Xia Han has already been dealt with. As for you, daring to approach the emperor with a weapon, your head is as good as gone. Rest assured, in this lifetime, I will fulfill your wish. I will bury you and your little green plum together. Xia Han took my trembling hand and calmed my fluctuating emotions. Rest assured, this lifetime, I will be by your side.